Hey, anyone else remember when this game's formula was novel and surprising rather than overplayed and cliché? Yeah, me either. So I was poking around my games library this week for something to review, and I happened across my copy of Far Cry 3, and I figured it was as good a time as any for a retro review, considering Far Cry 6 is right around the corner. I think. I don't pay as much attention to gaming news as I should, all things considered. Let's see, hold on. Sometime in 2021. Okay, so with Far Cry 6 presumably just around some sort of metaphorical corner, it felt like as good a time as any for a retro review. I kinda wanted to look at this game in two lenses, the first being with the nostalgia goggles fully installed, and again with an eye towards how its visuals and mechanics held up over time. And I'm gonna do both at the exact same time because I recorded about 92 hours of gameplay footage and now I gotta condense it down into a couple of minutes like an absolute madman, so let's get started. Far Cry 3 came as a bit of a shock to the gaming community when it first released. It was the first of the Far Cry games to be released on console, so like most console gamers, I'd never even heard of the series until this one came out. Before this, Far Cry was pretty similar to, say, the Stalker series, in that it had a pretty dedicated fan base, but the broader population either knew nothing about it or passed it by entirely. This is the game that changed that, and cemented the Far Cry formula as something of a cash cow for Ubisoft. So the game opens up with a group of honestly insufferable seeming 20-somethings enjoying their vacation in a bygone era before that kind of thing could get you arrested. To the game's credit, it only uses up about 40 seconds to establish all of their characters so well that you're actively rooting for the pirates who kidnap them and hold them for ransom by the time it's revealed that that's what's happened. It also manages to simultaneously set up two parts of the Far Cry formula that would come back to haunt the subsequent games like the malevolent ghost of a badly beaten horse. The clueless fish-out-of-water protagonist who discovers they have a raging vendetta against intact necks, and the unhinged whose only accurate description is just to spell crazy with a K, slap a TM and a Ubisoft logo on the end and call it a day. Anyway, it turns out you are playing as Jason Brody, a young Californian on vacation with your brothers, your girlfriend, and a couple other friends. Unfortunately for you, you picked the wrong island to mess around on and end up stuck in a cage with your older brother Grant, and everyone else apparently MIA. Fortunately, Grant served in the army and so knows exactly what to do.
Holy fuck, he's dead. That is what they teach you in the army.
It's an oddly specific thing to be taught, but I am glad he found a use for it. Anyway, Grant and Jason manage to escape, but right when they appear to be home free, Jason gets his first view of a neck with more holes in it than a neck usually has. This is actually a really impactful scene, and I think the sound design here is excellent. The voice of your brother's murderer being drowned out by the sound of the blood rushing in your ears and the tinnitus from the gunshot is just such a great choice for this moment, and it goes a really long way towards selling the trauma it inflicts on Jason. You manage to escape the pirates, but unfortunately have to cross a rope bridge to do so, which naturally means it's going to fall apart when you're halfway across, because that's what happens to rope bridges in this kind of thing. You wake up in a strange bedroom with a strange man tattooing you. We've all been there, am I right? And he explains that his tribe, now your tribe as well apparently, is at war with Vaz, the person who killed your brother and took your friends, and his band of pirates. With that, he scoots you out into the jungle for some tutorials on crafting and tower climbing, lest you forget this is a Ubisoft game for 5 minutes. Now, to be fair, when this came out, these mechanics weren't quite so dried out and old yet, but now it just serves as a reminder of how little this series has evolved over the years beyond some minor tweaks to the basic formula. That's not to say it doesn't work. It actually holds up pretty well, and it was kind of fun seeing all the little ideas that were prototyped in this game, knowing how they'd be fleshed out and refined in subsequent games. Or not changed at all, as the case may be. The rewards for completing the towers are hefty enough to motivate you to seek them out at every opportunity, and none of them are especially frustrating or difficult to climb, so no real complaints there. The biggest issue is that fall damage is absolutely rampant, even after you learn the skill to reduce it, so even a minor mistake could be the end of you. The crafting also straddles a bit of a line between tacked on and underdeveloped. You have to craft just about everything from ammo pouches to holsters, but your inventory is limited, and crafting components and trade items share slots in your bag, so inventory management is a constant struggle. You can craft larger bags to hold more stuff, and larger wallets to hold more money to buy more stuff, but there's not really all that much to spend the money on other than ammunition, because you get weapons for free by clearing the aforementioned towers. There's also the little issue of consumable items like buffs and healing syringes all sharing inventory space, so every buff you craft means one less healing syringe in your toolkit, and you'll find yourself basically never wanting to waste the inventory space on anything other than health kits. Fortunately, crafting components are plentiful, and really the only thing preventing you from crafting everything in the first hour is the fact that animals stick to specific parts of the island, and tracking them down can be a bit of a chore. Except the cassowaries. I swear those things will track you down from miles away just to boot you in the ass for committing the crime of existing with an eye shot. At the end of the day, if you just start thinking of the island itself as an expanded inventory slot, you'll find it pretty rare that you ever run out of anything important. Last word on the crafting system before I get back to the story, there is no quick craft to speak of, so you're going to find yourself constantly pausing the game to make more healing items or special arrows every 5 minutes, and it just grinds the pace to a halt every time. I like to pretend Jason holds his hands up and asks for a timeout real quick while he tapes more hand grenades to the end of more arrows and everyone just kind of stands around patiently waiting. It adds a much-needed sense of levity to some of the more over-serious parts of this game. You also can't craft simple things like arrows and Molotovs like you can in other games, and on the one hand, it feels a little bit odd that Jason is fully adept at crafting Tiger in his handbags, but can't stuff a rag into a bottle or tie a rock to the end of a stick, but on the other hand, it feels less like the game is trying to force you to use the bow like most other open-world shooters do these days for some reason. Getting back to the plot, it mostly revolves around Jason as he fights to free his friends and get revenge on the man who murdered his brother. The story follows a strictly linear path as you take on intel gathering missions to discover the locations of your friends, and then do the quest to save them from whatever horrible thing is currently being done to them at the moment. There's one particularly grisly quest line where you have to rescue a friend who's been trafficked into slavery, but in order to do so, you have to complete a series of tasks for the guy who bought them. It's a number of quests with some really messed up implications and themes, but it's all undercut by the introduction of a silly magical MacGuffin that shows up just for this quest, and then it never appears again until the very end of the game, despite being hyped up as something way more important than it turned out to be. Also, I think this guy can teleport, and is never explained in any way whatsoever. Magical human rights violators. Well, that's something I never thought I'd have to deal with. So from here, the game is essentially split into 4 parts. You have the friend rescuing, the revenge plot, the ingratiating yourself to the locals, and the ubiquitous enemy stronghold liberating. This is all framed within the slow dehumanization of Jason through his exposure to violence. This is actually one thing the game handles really well, with Jason near on having a panic attack after his first kill.
Oh god, I can't do this, Grant. Jay, look at me.
And later musing on how he can't get it up anymore without starting his day with a nice glass of orange juice and a good murder.
I never thought I'd be able to kill someone. The first time it felt wrong. Which is good, right? But now, it feels like winning.
It's too bad this all kind of gets put on a bus in the final mission and doesn't really affect either of the final endings in any way, but it is awesome to experience in the moment. And jokes aside, I do think the evolution of Jason from doe-eyed innocent into cold-hearted killer is something this game really does handle well. Now, I've talked a little bit about the friend rescue portion of the game, so let's finish that up before wrapping up the plot discussion. As the game progresses, you bring more of your group back to the safe house where they get busy repairing a boat to escape the island on. There are some really great character building moments to be had here, but unfortunately none of Jason's friends get much development, and you can't actually interact with them all that much outside of when the game brings you back to them as part of the story for a little snack and a nap, which feels like a massive missed opportunity to pull us into the world a bit more and to add some weight to our actions. On the revenge plot front, this storyline kind of intertwines its way through the other side plots, and continuously crops up again to motivate you to move forward. Mostly it follows the same pattern. Vaz captures you and/or one of your friends, monologues for a bit about something or other, attempts to kill you, and then fucks off for a while until it's time to do it again. Unfortunately, like a lot of other things in this game, Vaz is weirdly underused, despite being the face of the game and being prominently featured in just about all of its marketing. Michael Mando is a phenomenally talented actor, and I always enjoy watching him work, so it's a shame we don't get to see more of him in this game. He's not even the real antagonist. He's basically an underboss we unceremoniously kill off in a cutscene and then move on to a different crazy with a KTM Ubisoft logo bad guy who we both don't know and don't care about. When I first played this game, I felt ripped off by that, but revisiting it now, I realize what the developers were going for. Runtime padding. Actually, it's just supposed to showcase just how lost in his revenge quest Jason is, that he would continue to risk not only his own life, but the lives of his friends to continue hunting someone who's not even directly involved in the situation just because of his connection to Vaz. I say this is what they were going for, because it kind of ruins itself with the fact that the outcome is Jason finding and rescuing his other brother, who up until this point was presumed dead, which I think sends kind of the opposite of the intended message. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, there's yet another side plot involving becoming a full-fledged member of the tribe of people inhabiting the island. A tribe of people who all have wildly incongruous Australian, Asian, and South American accents with no real discernible reason why, considering they all seem to mostly share the same ethnic background, discounting a couple of named NPCs who actually affect the plot. Anyway, their leader seems convinced that you will become a legendary warrior and sets you off on a quest to prove you've earned the tattoo given to you at the start of the game. Fortunately, this quest also happens to be basically the exact thing you're already doing anyway, a bit like when your housemate asks if you wouldn't mind picking up a few things from the store while you're pulling into the parking lot. This gives an in-game explanation for the skill trees, as each skill you earn will actually add a piece to the pattern on your arm, representing your evolution into this warrior. Unfortunately, again, it all kind of gets stuck on a bus toward the end, and it all feels kind of pointless since they make it a point to tell you that the tattoos as well as the skills you learn from them will disappear if you leave the island. And that's really about it for the major plot beats without going into too many spoilers for the three of you who haven't played this game already. As far as the rest of the larger game as a whole is concerned, it's actually surprisingly solid despite its age. Graphically, it's held up really well, although the controls feel really sticky at times, especially when trying to heal. Sometimes weapon swaps and healing just straight up won't work, which can land you in some hot water as you run around in circles like an excitable dog trying to get something to happen. There's also basically no reason to explore the island once you've unlocked all the weapons. See, this is the bad kind of sandbox where side quests do next to nothing to actually flesh out the greater narrative and instead just turn the map a slightly different color and make fewer enemies spawn in certain locations. So, in a nutshell, your reward for doing the one thing you came to this game to do, i.e. put holes in necks, is to not have to put as many holes in quite as many necks. There actually is only about 3 side quests just copy-pasted around the map. Either go to a place with a thing, go to a place to get a thing, go to a place to kill a thing, or some combination of the 3. You can unlock fast travel points by clearing enemy strongholds, but even that becomes really trivial once you unlock the silent sniper rifle and can handle the whole camp from about 4 miles away. Or you can just shoot the door off the obligatory tiger cage and let Tony take care of your problems for you. You're also incentivized to do side quests with quote-unquote signature weapons that basically just account to adding more mods onto a weapon than they would allow you to put on your own and calling it a day. The thing is, these signature weapons are usually just silenced versions of pistols and machine guns, which are weapons that I tend to like to use unsilenced because I like the sound the boomsticks make when I pull on the bang switch. One thing I do really appreciate is the attention put into the notes in your journal. You could play through the entire game without ever opening it, but if you go to your journal and read about the people, places, and things you uncover, they all have a pretty fun, tongue-in-cheek humor in their descriptions that gives the game a lot of character. It definitely has some moments that are products of its time. For example, a mission where you burn fields of weed with a flamethrower while Skrillex blasts in the background. And yes, it is just as awesome as it sounds, until everything grinds to a halt because suddenly a bunch of dudes with miniguns show up and you have to keep pausing to craft more healing items. But overall, I think it's maintained a certain amount of charm that I think saves it from a lot of its downfalls. There are a couple of side characters that are really enjoyable as well, namely an undercover CIA agent who provides some fun commentary on the world at large, and my personal favorite, the German mercenary who's actually a really nice guy that everyone assumes is evil because of his voice.
Everybody thinks I am a bad guy because I come from Germany. I was promoted because of an accent.
Unfortunately, as I've said before, this game has a bad habit of shelving its best assets for the sake of moving the plot along, and more often than not, it's more of a hindrance than a help. Characters pop in and out like writer's room whack-a-mole, and the end result is that the story feels simultaneously dragged out and rushed as the mini-stories making up the larger plot are booted aside to make room for the next one. It also has that extremely annoying but incredibly popular method of quote-unquote open-ended storytelling, where which ending you get boils down to one binary choice you make at the end of the game, rather than being the result of choices you made throughout your playthrough. Overall, Far Cry 3 was something new when it landed, and I think it still holds up today despite having been re-released with a new coat of paint 3.5, soon to be 4.5 times since its release. If you haven't played it yet, I think it's still a solid enough game to earn a recommendation, even if it's just for some specific moments and missions and a very pretty, if very empty sandbox that's just, in general, nice to look at and poke around in. Give it a try. And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you could think of anything you'd like to have me review in the future. Or don't do any of those things, and I'll just have to keep coming up with things to review on my own. Anyway, as always, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.